Hi, I'm Derek Wheatley and welcome to episode 30 of the Weekly podcast. Thank you very much for your support as always during the week. A big thank you to Martin for the episode last week. We had a bit of crack on that and it was really strange because we recorded on the Tuesday and then the Wednesday the new restrictions came out and then Martin had to go back to the gym and start sorting out classes outside again and sorting out like 6 inside the building and things like that. So yeah, we would have had more to talk about if they had done it on the Monday. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. We're still doing the Facebook Live, always on it's on a Sunday now. You will see this, or you will listen to this after my most recent Facebook Live, and it'll be I'm in a bit of a different location, and I won't have any guitar, so I'm sorry about that. Some of you probably be delighted to hear that. But hope everybody's getting through Storm Ellen. We went out. We were without electricity for I think it was 13 or 14 hours, and fortunately I had a few books to read, so it was fine. But it is kind of weird when you're wandering around and you're thinking the amount of stuff we really rely on. I did have a cup of tea out of a flask though, so that was a new thing for me. But anyways, that's enough waffle. I want to introduce you to our guest today. She is a holistic and integrative counsellor and psychotherapist, and her name is Olivia Feehan. How are you, Olivia?
Hi, Derek.
Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. It was it's a rotten day out there. You were affected a little by the storm?
Yeah, so we had water and power outage yesterday and possibly today. Yet to see what the story is when I go home.
I mean, that's like a double whammy. That's tough.
It is. Definitely. I suppose I wasn't expecting it yesterday morning, but in saying that, we managed. Definitely more grateful for the cup of tea.
Yeah.
When I don't have to worry about not water outage.
Yeah, I think the cup of tea is so important. I went without until I think it was around 3 o'clock. I got a cup of tea out of that flask, and it was even though it was, it wasn't the usual method, it was one of the nicest cup of teas I had. I mean, I know we're giving out. It's only a cup of tea, but still,
it has a lot of meaning though.
It does have a lot of meaning,
especially when you are faced with the obstacle of the outage.
Yeah,
the cup of tea can be a lot more meaningful then as well, as a way of just
when it's disappeared, like the electricity. When it disappears, you realise we really missed that. So could you give us a short history of your upbringing, please?
Sure. So I'm from a family of 6. I am the second oldest. I was lucky enough to grow up on a farm in East Galway. So that is where Galway and Offaly meet.
Okay.
So the kind of integrated then in 2 communities then as well. So I would have went to primary school in Clonfert, which is in the parish of Mealy Gaircourt, and and then secondary school in Banagher in Offaly. Right. So then after school I kind of had a few years starting courses, stopping courses, in and out, working away at my part-time job. So it was for a few years, and then I went into childminding, which I really, really enjoyed, and I really enjoyed that experience. And then I moved to Dublin, and I trained as a Montessori teacher, and I alongside them was working in a creche as well. Okay. And then after that I trained as a Montessori teacher, I went and trained with ICPPD here in Athlone. Okay. And that's where I did the holistic counselling and psychotherapy. And now I work for myself in private practice, and I work as part of the team in AIT counselling students as well. Oh, nice. Yeah, so I think that's kind of like an overview.
That's
maybe.
Good though.
Yeah,
that was comprehensive. I like
it.
Yeah, it was very much so.
Great.
So when did you first become aware of mental health?
Yeah, I think the word mental health maybe early 20s.
Okay.
I don't know if that's just when I was becoming more aware, or when the languages were becoming more accessible. I'm not sure. Maybe a bit of both. But that's when I think I can start to recognise mental health. But in saying that, then when I reflect on myself, I can see now, I had anxiety. Yeah. I wasn't just an over worrier. Yeah. That was anxiety, and with depression as well. I may be thinking, this is what it is to be a teenager, or this is just who I am. So yeah, I suppose not having the language or the knowledge or education around that, which is not anyone's fault. I think that was just the time.
Yeah, of course.
And of course we're doing better now, and that's great. So yeah, I think the language wise around mental health when I was early 20s, but of course it's mental health itself has been with me all my life.
I think that's like an interesting one, because I've spoken to, obviously this is one of the questions that's always comes up in the episodes, and so many people have said what you said there about anxiety, and they didn't have any label for it. They thought it was like just nervous about something that's coming up, but like it was like something was coming up all the time, so they always felt nervous, but it really was anxiety. And like you say, reflection of the times, it wasn't part of the education of young people. It's one of those things that I kind of want to dig into a bit more, is trying to talk to people about that, you know, about the education of young people, how we're teaching people in schools about this kind of, you know, these different things like depression and anxiety and all sorts of the mental health issues, you know. So it's just interesting how it keeps popping up, that people may have had anxiety all that time.
Yeah.
And not being able to kind of recognize it, I suppose, is the best way of putting it. Yeah. So could you tell us then what holistic and integrative counselling is?
Good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I suppose the holistic part would be, well, from the way I work or the way I am, the holistic for me means the whole person. And that integration of the mind, the heart, the body and spirit, and on an individual level, and then of course as a collective as well. But first comes the individual part, and then it's how we meet other people then in the world and our community. And the integrative part is, I suppose, it's that integration as well of the holistic, the integration of mind, heart, body, spirit, and then also the integrative approaches that I use, different techniques or ways of bringing into that may be supportive to a client, that kind of integration, and then how the client then can integrate that learning into their own life as well. So it has a couple of different meanings, but it is kind of that of the integration part. The
integrate, like I had like CBT years ago now, obviously, but it was very beneficial to me, and I always think of the kind of proactive approach towards it. So that thing of, you know, the way we have in our minds of on films and things, when therapy is kind of grouped into one thing, and it's just someone lying on a couch and someone sitting off to the right and left behind them, and they're just talking. I've had that experience with psychologists and stuff, and I've enjoyed it, and it's helped a lot, but it wasn't the same as CBT, because I didn't feel as active, almost I didn't feel as part of it. So when it comes to that like integrative approach, is that something similar?
I think so. And I think there's also in what you're saying, in that you are the expert of your life, and to be proactive in that, in the choices, and part of the work as well. I'm not sure what your experience was before, but if you are kind of being more told rather than it's okay, let's be curious around what's happening here. I think the language we use can either shut people off, or you listen, or let's talk about it together, let's open up a dialogue, and that in itself can be very empowering, because it's straight away opening up that the client can come in and take as much control as they want to.
Like, so if I was so I'll tell you, I was diagnosed as someone who had at the start with severe depression and severe anxiety. So I was very timid with people in general. I found it so difficult to talk to people, even when I started with the counselling and stuff like that. I just found it so hard to kind of get out myself, you know. It felt I didn't want to expose myself. If someone was to approach you who was feeling, you know, those feelings of maybe depression and anxiety and that locked in kind of feeling, how would you? I know it's a very tough question to kind of fully express what you do, but just the initial approach you take towards it.
Yeah, I suppose first of all, I don't know what I would do, because it's not like a set way of of guidelines for each and every client. So I suppose it's the meeting first of two people in the room, me and the client. Yeah. And then it's about me understanding the client's experience of whether it be anxiety or depression, what their anxiety or depression means to them. Because if I have anxiety and you have anxiety, they could be two completely different experiences. So it's about me understanding the client's world, what anxiety is to them, and then really understanding, okay, so how have you coped so far? Yeah, because obviously you have been coping because you're sitting here in front of me. Exactly. And I think it's important to acknowledge all the work that has been done, or the ways of coping, or maybe just surviving in the world, and then look at, okay, so what else can support us? What else can we do here? Maybe there is like childhood wounds, maybe there's some trauma, and let's look at that. Maybe that needs to be healed, and coinciding in that, then, okay, so what parts do you want to grow more? Because it's all within us, but it's just more of giving that space to explore what can support us, what doesn't support us. A lot of it we're doing instinctively, but we might not even be aware that that's what we're doing. And I think that piece of compassion then as well is essential in all the work as well. Yeah, that's like that idea of somebody just turning up, that's such a hard thing to do. Like if I'm talking about, I suppose I'm talking about my situation, and if anybody wants to, they haven't listened back, the first two episodes are kind of I talk about that kind of the kind of stuff I went through to get to certain position, to get into certain therapies and things like that, to try and I'm still trying to do it. You're still looking for various ways of doing it, but just to get, like you say, surviving in the world is one thing, because if you are severely depressed, you, like I for one definitely had suicidal ideation and things like that. So to get from that position to presenting yourself in front of like yourself, it is a big step, and I don't think that the person who is suffering will even recognize that as something. Yeah, probably not. Yeah. And you're so right that it is a massive step to even just acknowledge that, okay, this might be something that could be of help to me. Yeah. Even if it is like a last resort, wherever you are at in that, it's where you are. Making the phone call or sending an email to make an appointment, and then actually showing up. Yeah. Driving there, walking there, getting the bus. If you have to walk up the stairs, come into the waiting room, ask for your therapist or your counselor, and then come into the room. That in itself is such an achievement. Yeah. And you're right, someone who is coming in and maybe they have a lot of that kind of inner critic might be very high and their voice may be very loud, so they mightn't be able to even acknowledge or see the achievement in just being in the room and showing up for themselves that day. Yeah, and I think that's what was for me was great about that, the kind of approach where each time I went to see the therapist, he gave me a little bit of not a challenge, but just kind of a little bit of homework to do, in the sense that just go and go into a cafe and order a tea. That was more like way more rewarding for me than it was just sitting across talking to someone. And I think that that part of an approach towards therapy where it's a proactive for the patient or the client, it's so important. Like those little goals that you get, and it's just that feeling of self-worth, and I think that's, like, for me it was massive. Yeah. And was it the take that piece of control as well? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think, like, I remember just the little bits of he was getting me to do, like even just cycle through town, may have been the first one or whatever it was, but it was taking the control away from, it's a good way of putting it, because you're taking the control away from that anxiety that's kept you inside for the last 2 months, or from those like awful thoughts that you may be having, and those things of you say about the self-critic, and someone you're just constantly at yourself, like you never just give yourself that little bit of a break. So to be rewarded, and it wasn't like you were looking for the therapist to reward you, it was like you were doing that to yourself, but accepting the fact that you were doing it, and kind of saying, this is
Like I have my mother is very like that. She will say that was brilliant what you did, and I'll still kind of push back sometimes, and I just have to accept. Well, it's a good thing, like, you know, get there and you've done it. Rest now for a while and then move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
You know, and that approach is great.
Yeah. And I use the word control there, and maybe that is it, but I think actually a more helpful word to use is that choice.
Yeah.
That choice of I'm choosing, acknowledging where you're at. So it's that, you know, maybe I feel very anxious right now and not really in control, and I am choosing to cycle through town.
Yeah.
And I'm doing that for me, even though it might be challenging, I might struggle a little bit. I'm choosing to do that for me. And then if you can acknowledge that, how wonderful it is to be able to do that, and what an achievement that is for yourself. If you can give yourself that self-compassion, great. And if not, it's just being open to it, because that self-compassion piece can be really challenging. Yeah. But sometimes just the openness to that one day I might be able to give it to myself. That itself is enough. And
like we said just a couple of minutes ago about, you've made the choice to go to visit you to get better, and that's, you know, a reward. So we'll just get into an advert and we'll get back to it. All right.
Great.
If I can find the button. I'm always useless. I never put it on the pause button first and then I scramble around, but we found it. Fusion Training Centre, Monkstand Athlone. A place to train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, kickboxing, martial arts and CrossFit. A great atmosphere with experienced coaches and a real sense of community. If you want to join the team, find us on Facebook at Fusion Training Centre or drop in for a chat. Fusion Training Centre. Train like a warrior. Got through that without any problems for once.
Good job.
Thank you. That's the first person who's ever said good job. So what drew you to psychotherapy and the holistic counselling?
I actually remember in school saying to my career guidance counsellor, I think I'd like to be a counsellor, and she said, you're too young. Okay. You know, which, to be fair, at probably 15 I was. So I think there was always something there. I could always imagined myself doing that, or holding that space for people. I suppose I liked the idea of it. So it kind of came back around then, and I did choose to do it. I think I didn't question it too much. I just knew I wanted to do that. I really like the way ICPPD delivers their courses, or holds that space for the experiential, and just the way their college, their ethos of the colleges, and holistic. Like, I remember I didn't really know what the word holistic meant, and I was going for my interview for the college, and we had like a little prep area where me and two other hopeful students were sitting, and the lovely Christine Moran of ICPPD was just giving us like a welcome, and before we went in for our interview. And I remember sitting there thinking, oh, I hope they don't ask me like what the word holistic means, because I actually don't know. I know I like the sounds of it, and I know I like it, and I just would trust that. But I remember there thinking, oh man, I hope they don't ask like what holistic means, because I wasn't really sure. But I just knew I liked it. It was more intuition than anything else for choosing the course.
I mixed up, I hope you won't be offended, I mixed up holistic and homeopath the other day. Homeopath, that's the right word, isn't it? And my friend was like, no, God, no, they're completely different things, don't.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's a pharmacist.
Okay.
So he is you know what I mean? Like, he's a reason to be a bit dodgy about homeopathy. That's the right word again, isn't it? I'm so bad at pronouncing things.
No, but I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I'm not even gonna risk pronouncing it, because I'm not sure. Okay, so he was saying holistic.
He was saying holistic good.
Okay.
The other thing bad. I won't say the word again because I'll mess it up. How destructive is negativity?
How destructive?
Yeah, and I mean the way you say, like, the mind, the body, and the spirit especially for the spirit, actually, it's kind of interesting for me because I don't know if I'm very spiritual, but I'd be interested in hearing your kind of thoughts on that. But yeah, like just how destructive it is on the whole, you know.
Like anything over or over negative, as well as over positive.
Okay.
It can be destructive, I
Yeah.
suppose, or not helpful. So yeah, when we're in a space of, you know, always thinking or being even around people who are constantly speaking negatively, kind of that glass half empty type of way of being in the world, everything is negative. Their perspective on everything is that, then yeah, that is harmful to your mind, your heart, your body, and then probably your spirit. And in saying that, there's also space for it, because as part of being a human being, sometimes we might go there, and that's okay. But when it's our first response to everything, that it's like, okay, this might be something to look at here. Is this way of being supporting me? And on the flip side of that, but even with positive, over positivity can also be harmful. Yeah. Because the glass isn't always half full. Or if I am in pain and I'm hurting, or I'm embarrassed, or I'm just annoyed, and someone comes in and says, oh, just be positive, it doesn't validate how I am. There's room for both. So there's room for hurting, and then you can support yourself in that. Yeah,
I think that's interesting, actually, because, you know, it is the idea that we have to be positive, you know. But like you said there is a space for being negative as well, and I'm delighted to hear that, like, because I can be negative at times, but not to the point where I think it's affecting my mental health or anything. It's just, you know, sometimes you're just like, oh, in the gym or something, and the music is terrible or something. You know, just these tiny little things that aren't going to affect you when you leave the gym, or when when you're at home or whatever. But I'm glad to hear there's space for negativity, and I hope people who know me out there take notes of that, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so important, even what we perceive as negative, like not liking the music. Is that being negative, or is that just not liking the music? Yeah. But if we're labeling ourselves with, oh, I'm so negative because I don't like the music, that's harmful. Yeah. And that's not supportive, when matter of fact is, I just don't like the music. Yeah. And that's okay. Exactly. Yeah, I agree fully, because I get stick in the gym for not liking Adam Sandler films. And apparently that's because I'm negative rather than someone who has good taste in films, you know. And the person who accuses me all the time, he's coming on in a couple of weeks, so I'm going to have a chat with him then. Talk it out. Yeah, talk it out. Yeah. I don't think we'll come to any resolution, because he loves him and I don't, but agree to disagree.
Yeah, exactly. But it's taste as well sometimes. It's not negativity. Yeah. Yeah, I understand. So like we spoke a tiny bit about this already, but I used to think very low on myself, which comes with the territory if you're suffering from depression or anxiety or whatever it is. What advice would you give to people who like are very harsh on themselves all the time, you know? None. I don't give advice. Do you not? No. So okay, but let me put it this differently, right? I know what you're saying though. Yeah. Okay, so what would you say to yourself now, if you were in a bad place, a dark place, something happened, certain things happened, a kind of perfect storm kind of thing, and you're in a dark place? Not so much what would you say to yourself, but how would you go about getting out of it? Because I was talking to my friend yesterday, Josh, and he's been on a couple of times, and he wanted me to ask you about this. It was to do with mood and versus kind of emotion. So if you're emotional about something, if you're happy about something, or if you're sad or whatever it is, you can kind of address that. As long as you're mature and in touch with yourself, you can address that. But if you wake up in the morning and your mood is just terrible and there's no reason for it, what do you do to kind of get out of that? Yeah. So first I'll acknowledge the
the work I have done personally
Yeah.
to be in a place to be able to meet myself there, to meet myself with the low moods. And I think first of all, it's important to acknowledge for the listeners, if you are someone who does wake up in a low mood, it's important to first acknowledge, okay, where are we at with that? Are we aware of our low mood, or are we just accepting of that's who we are, who I always am? Or am I aware of, oh, this is how I am today?
Yeah.
There's a few things maybe I would inquire about. Did I wake up that way? Or have I checked all social media and then noticed I'm in a low mood? Have I checked in with myself first before I've checked in with the world? Them little things, because I definitely in the times we're living in, social media or our phone is the alarm's going off and you're just I'll just all the notifications, and then you're consumed with the world and getting the updates. You know, so I'd first inquire, okay, so how are you actually? And if you can check in with that before you check in with the world, that's great. And then so like if I am in a low mood, then okay, the question then is, okay, this is where I'm at. Maybe I know why I'm in a low mood, maybe I don't. Maybe I've had a really hard week, or I'm just, COVID tired, whatever it is. How can I support myself right now? How can I support how I am? So maybe I might journal a little bit about how I am. Maybe I'll go take a walk. Maybe I'll make myself a cup of tea. Maybe I'll organize to meet a friend. What can I do to support myself in where I am at right now? In this moment, how am I and how can I support myself?
We talk actually just to run off the journal thing, right? Because, it's interesting because it's recommended quite a bit by people, like to journal and things like that. But me and Josh were just chatting about that as well yesterday. And it's like, if you're in a really good place and you journal, so you're writing down how you feel and all that stuff, you won't need that information. If you're happy, you don't need that information. If you're really low, I'd find it's hard to journal it. I almost have to wait till I'm out of a high or out of a low before I can do it. So there was this kind of it was my bad, I suppose, that I was doing it in the middle of either a high or a low, and then the information was almost, I couldn't quite get in touch with the information anymore because it was, that high was gone or that low was gone. I'm talking about like bipolar highs and lows. So for me, I don't know if you even have an answer for this, or if I'm just rambling, but for me it was like afterwards it was better for me to journal rather than in the middle of it,
Yeah, and I think it's that trusting of what's right for me, what's not right for me. And sometimes it's about the content. Sometimes it's about, okay, so this is how I am, this is what's going on for me, and this, I can learn from this, or I'll understand what will support me. And sometimes it's just the act of actually writing, of getting it from the head, from the heart, what you're holding in the body, or just your mood, whatever's annoying you. Sometimes it's just the act of actually writing rather than, what am I learning about this? So if you're learning something about it, that's a plus. That's great. And you can get familiar with yourself if there's patterns starting to arise, or behaviors that you're noticing that keep coming up. Okay, that's great. And sometimes it's just enough just to write as a way to support yourself in that moment.
And you do think there's benefits to journaling and things like that?
There is benefits, especially if you are in counselling or therapy, because it is only 1 hour a week, and it is a way of just continuously checking in with yourself, supporting yourself, even if it's just okay, these were my moods today, this is how I was. If I was very low, scale it on a 1 to 10, and then if you do that every day, we can start to recognize, okay, so this is what's happening, and okay, so yesterday was an 8, what else was happening then around that? What kind of day did you have? It can be very helpful in understanding more about ourselves. It can also just be very helpful. It's very therapeutic in just writing, and it won't be helpful for everyone.
Like everything, there's all and I think, like, you may even never go back to those pages that you've written, so it's it might be in the moment.
There's no obligation that you have to go back and learn or analyze and understand everything. If you want to, absolutely go. But if it's enough just to get it out of yourself and onto the paper and then let it go, great.
Brilliant. So I used to think maybe a few years ago, I was very wary of things like the terms rather than the actual, the practice of it, but like mindfulness, self-care, self-love. And then I started to kind of slowly kind of come around to this stuff, and I kind of read more about it. So like, would you say that self-care is kind of the most important thing for us, in life in general, I suppose?
Yeah, and I suppose maybe picking up on what you were saying as well, they have become nearly buzzwords as well. So I'm also mindful of that, and like, it's great that they're being spoken about, but we don't want to lose the actual meaning of what it is. Okay, so self-care could be going getting your nails done and getting a massage, but it's also like when I'm working with a client and we're talking about their self-care, and I suppose I put in the word there, supports as well. First, I want things that cost nothing, that you can have, like if it's your breathing technique or grounding yourself, things that you can lean into like straight away if you're in a moment where you need to support yourself. And then of course you can build on them and have as many self-care and supports as you want to, and the more you have the better, because depending on where you are at that day, there'll be something different that you need to support yourself with. So the more you have, the better. But the question was, are they important? Like
self-love, I suppose, is that the most important thing for a happy life, do you think?
I would say self-compassion.
Okay.
Yeah, self-compassion.
And why would you say self-compassion?
I think it is essential in just being a human being. In meeting ourselves and where we're at, in acknowledging all that we're doing for ourselves and making room for more. And when we have that self-compassion for ourselves in a real way, then we can also have the compassion for others. So I suppose like the time we're living in, is self-compassion being highlighted enough? Is it, do you feel compassion when you're in the supermarket, or is it more of a judgmental atmosphere?
I mean, I like to think I have compassion for others, but I suppose I never really thought of it as like it's to have self-compassion. And like, I talk about self-love, and I know what you mean about buzzwords and like hashtags, even just the kind of things that we throw out there, but I try to do the self-love thing and the self-care thing. It is quite difficult sometimes, just getting the headspace. Like you say, there's so much outside of us, that whole, like you say, phones and information and all the stuff that's going on in the world right now, to kind of give yourself that bit of space. And I remember Blind Boy on his podcast talking about how sometimes, I mentioned this before too, but it's about how sometimes you can just take 2 or 3 hours to go and play a computer game, watch a film, listen to your favorite songs, whatever it is, and not feel guilty about it. You don't always have to be doing something like that's striving for like the big thing in your life. Sometimes it's good to take a little break and just enjoy certain things. And I suppose I've been working on that a bit more.
It's good, and it's very important when we are living in a society which praises progress, and it's always about more. You need to do this, you do a degree, and then that's not enough, you need to do a master's or whatever it is. It's always about achieving, and that's everything has its place. But it's checking out, is this supporting me? Is this helpful? If I'm feeling burnt out at the end of the week, then that's kind of a sign that maybe it's not. Or if I feel no matter what I do, it's not enough, then that's another kind of like a little red flag saying, okay, well, let's hold on here. Is this what I want my life to be about? And checking in then, okay, so what does bring me joy? Because the laughter, the joy, it's an essential part of being a human being. And whether it's going playing a video game or taking that time out just to do nothing, like, what is it to do nothing anymore? you know, it's very underrated.
It's a very hard thing to do you find? You know, I was talking to we had Elaine Burke on there 2 or 3 weeks ago now, and it's just that idea of I'd love to be able to kind of sit there, and we were talking about meditation at the time, but even if you weren't meditating, even if you just went into a room and just sat there and did nothing, even the idea of that I struggle with, because I'm gonna want to put on a song or do something, so it won't be nothing anymore. So it's kind of an interesting one to kind of get your head around. I probably won't ever get there, but I know that kind of thing of just do something that you enjoy without the pressures of striving for something big in your life or what people demand of you. My next question is null and void because it asked for a piece of advice. But I can actually expand on it a bit, because when people go to you, they could be depressed or anxious or grief as well. That's another big thing, and it's I have my grandmother passed away 3 years ago. Obviously, she was the first person that I loved who had passed away. Who was like central in my life, we'll say. When I hear about the grief that people have and the kind of people in their immediate family members passing away, I never connected it with counselling though, and I don't know why that is, and it's silly on my part. It seems very obvious to connect it with counselling, that you need to talk about these things with people, because they're so if you don't talk, it's gonna be there for a longer time. So
yeah, and I wouldn't say it's silly.
Okay,
thank you. Say yeah, no, not at all. I would say that, or not that I would say, but I would be wondering, okay, so were you able to honor your relationship with your grandmother in a way that fit into your life?
Yeah. Do you know, there was a thing that happened, and it was before she passed away, but she had dementia, so it was one of those drawn out processes. But I remember at an event for my family, for my grandfather's 90th, actually it was, and she was obviously not there. She was in the hospital or the home, and I remember my younger brother getting quite upset about it, and that she couldn't make it, and all of a sudden it hit me how important she had been to us. And it was like, that was my it wasn't like a revelation, because obviously I knew, but it was just that moment that it hit me quite hard, that I realised that I felt exactly how he felt about the situation. Obviously then when she passed, because it was such a drawn out process for my mum and for my grandfather and things like that, the family in general, it becomes kind of a relief is not the right word for it, but she wasn't enjoying her life anymore. It wasn't a life anymore, and she was a good age, and I suppose she went probably at the right time. Maybe it could have been sooner, but I probably felt that moment that you're talking about before she passed away, and so I was able to deal with it, and kind of that way. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It was a little bit, and I guess why I haven't connected the two, grief with counselling, is because I haven't had the hard hit of maybe losing your one of your parents or a sibling or something, like, and maybe that's why I didn't put them together.
I think it depends. Each relationship that we're grieving for will be different, and trust, I suppose, yourself in that, you didn't need extra support for grieving for your grandmother, and that's okay. Not everyone will, and people have their own way of grieving, and it's only if we need extra support, or we need space, or maybe we don't have anyone in our life to connect with, or we don't know how to honor that person. And I suppose there's also kind of sometimes the notion of, well, that detachment from the person, when that isn't necessarily true. It's I love the quote by Maury Schwartz: death ends a life, not a relationship. So it's like, okay, so how do I continue to, because it's the adjustment of living your life now without this person who you love, and that doesn't mean that person isn't there. They're physically not there, but how can you live in a way to bring them with you? it doesn't have to be either or
Yeah.
all or nothing.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. You don't have to. It doesn't shut it down. It can continue on, and
Absolutely.
because obviously all I have is great memories of my grandmother. So it's great. Like for me, it's great. Do you think that the Irish have a particularly they have this peculiar relationship with death? I think, and the way we go about grieving and things. I think other cultures would look at the whole wake thing that we do as something very strange, you know. But I would also kind of extend that to how the Irish talk to people about emotions and how they're feeling. I think maybe, like we spoke a bit earlier about mental health coming into the fore a bit more and people talking about it a bit more. I still think that there's a little bit in us that is a little bit private and a little bit embarrassed to show our emotions, you know.
Yeah, there's something in that for sure. That maybe it's harder. I think it's important to also acknowledge that people have different ways of communicating.
Yeah.
So not everyone has to or needs to communicate with words. Some people might communicate by doing things for other people.
Oh, okay.
We have different ways of, I suppose, showing love. And with grief, it's no different. We have different ways of grieving. There's no right or wrong or a particular way to grieve. If the way you're grieving supports you and helps you live your life now without that person, and you're still able to honor them and bring them with you, then great. If it's more challenging or you need some extra support, then that's there too. But even, I suppose, the wake, how we honor a person, maybe that allows space for the grieving as well. Okay, the conversation mightn't be continuing once the person is buried or cremated, and maybe there's a struggle around that conversation. And the person who is grieving may also be supporting themselves in other ways. If they're not openly speaking about it, which they may not want to, or they might find it hard, it's not to say they're not grieving. There's no particular one way, or we need to be mindful of, you know, it's this way or no way, or that kind of polarized way in which so many things in our society is, that there's room for everything. And again, it comes back to compassion and that idea that everyone's doing their best at any given moment as well.
And it's about, like you said, because everybody has different ways of dealing with things, and it's about you giving them a little bit more understanding that this is their way. They don't have to do it the way you're doing it. There's a lot more to it.
I think that's actually very apt in grief, because grief is so individual. So you could have 6 members of one family, and how they grieve could be very, very different. And if we're expecting people to grieve the same way we are, then it becomes something else more than the grief then. So it's just to be mindful of that.
It's going to cause problems, like if there is that, like if people are forcing their grief on other people, or the way, I should say the way they're grieving on other people rather than their grief.
I think anytime we have an expectation of another,
that's true. It's not good.
False.
No, it always disappoints us because we always want them to do what we do. Have you found an increase since the lockdown in people with having problems?
I would say I'm experiencing an increase in people supporting themselves.
Okay.
Maybe the shutdown gave people an opportunity to reflect on their life. Maybe people had to live in environments which was not supportive to them or was really challenging, and really brought to the surface of, okay, this isn't okay, and how do I support myself? So I don't think it's really created as much, more so it's highlighted maybe what was already there. And what I'm experiencing now in my practice is more people reaching out for help and support.
It's great, obviously, but you know, I did think there was worries that, you know, it was such a strange situation, obviously, for everybody. It suited me a lot. I was quite happy with it, and when I've spoken again about this, but when my problems started to come was when I had to approach life again as such, you know, and to go back into I'm still not great going into town, actually. I've only been in there once or twice. I can go to the gym and I'm fine. There's a group of supportive people in there. They all know me, and you that situation brings on comfort. Whereas if I'm going into town on the bike and it seems like everything's up in the air again, you know. And it's nothing to do with the COVID-19 or contracting it or anything. It's nothing to do with that. It's just the anxiety of these. You have to walk here and you have to, and you know, and you don't know. Like, I went to the doctor's the other day and I just didn't know what I was supposed to do and stand, and got a bit of telling off actually at one point, which makes you so bad. Like, it makes you so, like, my anxiety just went through the roof when that happened, because I was thinking, I didn't do anything, did I? You know? Yeah. And it's just that whole thing of not knowing where I should go and I was feeling out of place 10 years ago when I was really bad, but now I'm feeling out of place for an entirely different reason, you know. And I just thought that during the lockdown that people were just gonna struggle with their mental health, really struggle. And I'm glad to hear that they are coming to, you know, actually coming for help now, rather than just kind of sitting in it and going through their everyday life with it, you know.
Yeah, and just to pick up on what you shared, that you're definitely not alone in that. In the shutdown, I suppose everyone knew their role. Yeah. Whether it was to stay at home or you were an essential worker, everyone knew the role they had to play. And then as we came out of that and restrictions were lifted and people got some more freedom back. Yeah. Okay, that's okay. And yet now we're in this period of, the word contradictions is being thrown around a lot. The uncertainty of everything is really, really highlighted. Like, life has never been certain. Yeah. But maybe we could live our lives in a way where we felt like it is. Yeah. Because we could make plans for next weekend. We can make plans to go on holidays next month. Yeah. Whereas this whole year has really highlighted how, yes, everything's uncertain, and no one ever promised us things were going to be certain. No. That was never the deal. But it's just the fact that now we can't get away from it. Yeah. That every week things are changing, and that element of trying maybe to stay in control of certain things, and then supporting yourself around areas where, okay, so it could be a struggle to go to the supermarket, so how can I support myself in that? And that self-compassion is so important right now for self-compassion, and of course compassion to others, because everyone's just doing their best. And we're all trying to get it right, and things are changing and we're not always sure. So if we can have that self-compassion for ourselves and for others, it would just be a lot more supportive now.
It would make it a lot easier for everyone. And how do you find it? Are you okay with it like that? You know, I mean, when you walk into somewhere and there's arrows pointing here and there, do you get a little bit like, oh, which way to go? Or are you quite confident doing it, you know?
I think it depends on the day.
Okay.
Depends on the day. And I think one day I was going the wrong way, and someone called me, and I was like, oh, sorry, my bad. And you know, maybe at one time I could have criticized myself for that and said, oh, Olivia, like, you know, it's stupid. You know, whereas now I can thankfully give myself that self-compassion. Well, I'm in the shop, I'm doing well, I went the wrong way, nothing bad happened, it's okay, no damage has been done. And keep it in perspective.
Keep it, and if the person is compassionate about for you, like, and just saying, listen, you're just going the wrong way there. I want someone to tell me I'm going the wrong way, because I don't want to stand out by going the wrong way. So it's just the same if it happens to you and somebody's going the wrong way. It's just the way you tell them that they don't be criticizing them.
If we can remember in all situations that everyone is just doing their best. So if we're going to speak to someone and say you're going the wrong way, if we have it in our minds that this person is just doing their best and they're going the wrong way, how will I share that information with them? Whether, or if I'm looking at them like, that person's going the wrong way, like what the hell's going on here? Like the language we use, the tone, and the way we see people, it makes all the difference. Those little things.
I hope loads of people are listening to this, because it's good. I like that whole thing of just the compassion for others and just calm down a bit. There's no need to be angry or annoyed. It's just something, it's an inconvenience, usually a mild inconvenience.
I think that's really important what you're saying as well, is that a lot of people right now are living in a from a fear-based place. So if someone is projecting their fear onto you, you do not have to take it. You can invisibly hand it back to them or walk away. Do what you need to do to support yourself, and to be mindful if you are around a lot of people that are living from a fear-based place, just be mindful of that for yourself and look at, okay, how can I support myself? It doesn't mean that you have to stop talking to everyone everyone who is living from a fear-based place, but it's to look at, okay, how can I mind myself in this.
Cool. And so on a lighter note, what do you like to do in your spare time when you're not helping people?
I like to walk my dog. So
what breed of dog is it?
He is a mix of a Labrador and a Retriever.
Oh, nice. 2 good dogs.
Yeah, he's a beaut. He's gorgeous, full of energy.
Deadly.
So I love going for walks with him. I love reading.
Yeah.
I love just hanging out with friends, getting to catch up with friends, really appreciating that I can do that now.
Yeah, of course.
And then I like I'll try new things as well. Like I picked up sewing earlier this year.
Oh really? Yeah. What prompted that?
Well, I actually bought I was gifted a sewing machine maybe like 7 years ago, and I decided then to take it back out and give it a go. So I'm not doing it right now, so I go through phases of doing. I'm open to doing new things or learning something new. I think it's important if you can to get out of your comfort zone, learn something new, start at the bottom from something where you know nothing about it, and learn, because we can be comfortable in just knowing what we know. So it's
very rewarding as well, isn't it? Like to achieve something as you're moving up the steps of something. It's
and humbling as well to start from zero.
I talk about jiu-jitsu, but that's one of those things where it's absolutely humbling because you're just getting killed, but as you move up the steps. But even if you were talking about sewing, or you're talking about knitting, or whatever it is, every little achievement is a win, and it's good for the mind. I think it's huge for the mind.
And then the beautiful learning experiences of, I did that stitch wrong, or I forget how to thread this, and I have to go back again, or what did I learn from that? And them lovely learning experiences that we can get from it as well. And
that, like, the mindset that you have helps the process, rather than getting something wrong and then going, oh crap, it's just the mindset of like we've spoken for the last hour about this thing. It's it's good. I'm very poor at jiu-jitsu. I get I have a bad day and I'm like, oh, I'm terrible at it now, but I'm not. I'm the same as I was that morning or the day before. Just recognize that you're not terrible all of a sudden. It doesn't happen like that, so just be good and just be
and even again, to put it in perspective, if for yourself, if we were to talk about that, and so if I have 6, as you say, good days and 1 not so good day, out of 7, that's actually doing pretty all right. But how does that one day, do you know what I mean? That one day seems to just be the mountain of over everything else, and it's so strange how the mind works in that way. But I suppose it's the space you're into and that at that time, of course,
that comes along with it. So what are your plans for the future then?
I think I'm just trusting where I am right now. I'm very open to where I'm going to go, where it'll take me. Open to opportunities and experiences.
Would you describe yourself, because we spoke about spirits already, as a free spirit? With caution.
I'm this beautiful contradiction of I love to control things too.
Right.
I love to be in control, and when I let that go, the most lovely things come. It's like that. When you think of a river flowing. when you try to control the flow, you just kind of mess up the rhythm. Whereas if you just let it go the way it naturally and organically does, it flows beautiful.
Yeah.
But it's that as human beings, we're contradictions. So I flow between that I want to control and then let it go, see what happens.
My psychologist a few years ago gave me that kind of something similar, in the sense that I felt that if I stuck to these rigid routines, because of my anxiety, the rigid routines were helping me, but they were very, very destructive, because I always, in my mind, it was like, if I move away from these, it's going to be a nightmare. But there's nothing rewarding, I don't think, about that kind of life where you're just stuck in, it's the same thing all day, every day, and that's where you're comfortable. Some days I like that. I'll be happy to have a routine for the day. But some days, and if I allow it to happen, like you say, something cool might happen, you know? You go into town, you might meet up with an old friend or something. And
yeah, and I think it comes back to trusting where you're at. So if for a period of your life, you need to stick to that routine, because that is what's getting you through the day. Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, anytime, it was a great chat. Want to say thanks very much, as always, to John for his technical support. To his family and Megan, also to Jer, my mum, my dad, and my grandfather. You can find us on YouTube, or to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. Facebook is the Weekly Wheatley. Instagram is, you'll find on the Weekly Wheatley. It's something different, but you'll find it on that. And Twitter is Wheatley_there. We're on Spotify, Apple, Anchor, Google Podcasts, some other ones I never remember, but etc. If you go to Anchor, actually, that's probably the best place to go, because it tells you all the platforms we're on. Thanks to everyone for listening. It's been a great episode, and Olivia, thanks for coming.
Thank you, Derek.
Appreciate it. Listen, everybody, we'll talk to you on Sunday or Wednesday or whenever you tune in. Take care. Goodbye. So, just a little clumsy edit here. As I was asking my last question to Olivia, which was basically, where can we find you, if you wanted to contact her, I hit the pause button, and I only realized that maybe a minute and a half later. I'm very, very lucky that happened at the very end of the podcast, because we would have lost an awful lot of great content if I somehow managed to do it in the middle. So I'm just going to read out to you exactly what Olivia gave me contact details wise. You can find her at her website, oliviafeehancounselling.ie. You can contact her email at info@oliviafeehancounselling.ie. You can contact her at 0899422447. Also, she is on Instagram at oliviafeehan_counselling, and also on Facebook at Olivia Feehan Counselling. So apologies to Olivia for messing up that, but there we go. If you liked what you heard, get in contact with Olivia.